Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT here with my running buddy from Stream TV Insider, editor and queen, Bevin Fletcher at IBC 2025. We are just kind of wrapping up the first full day of the conference with some of the odds and ends that we've seen in this sprawling, overwhelming show in Amsterdam that follows the state of the international broadcasting business. So Bevin, what have you been seeing today?
Well, there was a really interesting CTO panel at the beginning of the day where CTOs from ITV and Warner Brothers Discovery talked about how they're using GenAI today in different applications, which there were a bunch of. I think ITV is using it in over 250 applications, including to generate ad creative to tap into the small and medium business market for advertising on their platform. That's one way, and then Warner Brothers is using it in these like preview drop-in moments on their streaming service, where GenAI can go through the catalog and pick out key moments that don't have audio that would just take too long to do otherwise, and then humans curate those clips, and they've shown that it gives 40% uptake on the AI-generated drop-in moments. That's what they're called. It's basically like a preview of the show.
So with the human curation on top of the AI-generated content to make sure, hey, this is good?
That the ones the AI picks are adopted.
Yeah, okay. So a 40% uptake when you've got that 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of impressive. So really the key, it sounds like, is don't just do AI, automate everything, wash your hands of it and walk away, right?
Yeah, a little
Okay,
bit.
all right.
Yeah, the AI I think narrows it down to like 6 or 8 choices, but like out of a massive catalog to be able to narrow it down that much is a huge win.
Absolutely. I was at some conversations this morning with at the IAMB, or IABM, I'm sorry, IABM, which is a nonprofit trade group that represents the broadcasting industry and technology. And they had some executives from Banijay, some other organizations. Banijay is the huge French broadcaster, talking about, what's it take to actually buy some of this technology. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, everybody knows they need to get into AI. On the other hand, it's like, oh my God, this is going to turn everything upside down. What are we going to do? It's going to cost a lot of money. If you pick the wrong thing, you're screwed. Or if you pick the right thing that's good now, in 6 months it might be the wrong thing. It's really tough to kind of figure it out. And so there's a lot of, fear and loathing, I guess, is as good as anything. And in Amsterdam, you can't invoke a little Hunter Thompson. Where else could you do it? Maybe, I guess Las Vegas these days, or Aspen, but really, Amsterdam. That was where Hunter Thompson should have ended up. But that being said, I found it really interesting to hear some of that. They had an AWS person up there talking about how they try to just figure out what the client wants and then work backwards, which is kind of an interesting sort of approach. Instead of saying, hey, we got a bunch of stuff, use this. I also talked with a bunch of CEOs, places like Mediagenics, Avid, and other companies. We'll have some videos from some of those conversations that we'll share separately. But it's everybody's doing AI, but everybody's trying to figure out, okay, that's a checklist item. That's the thing that we do because we have to have stuff, and it's definitely going to make things easier, and in some ways, but you got to try to figure out how it helps engagement, because that's really important. How do you avoid churn? How do you keep people around looking at the next thing and all that good stuff?
And I think one of ITV's takeaways was that it wasn't all about just trying to lower costs. It was, how can I expand my business so that it generates more revenue? How can I use it for me to be a business expander rather than just a cost saver?
Right. But you certainly hear from all these folks, look, times are tight. Consolidation is coming, both within these individual sectors, and we're seeing things like this conversation that just broke out about, oh hey, maybe David Ellison, thanks to his dad's extraordinary week at Oracle, he saw the company add 31% in its value, and it was already a $200 billion company or $300 billion company. Added 31% in 5 days, and so that's a little extra money for them to go shopping, and they talked about going shopping for Warner Brothers Discovery. So that's a big thing happening in the United States. But both those companies have big ambitions far beyond U.S. shores. So that's the kind of thing that really starts to affect some of the vendors in here, trying to reach out and talk to the people they need to talk to. I find it really an interesting time. There's a lot of turnout here. I mean, the hallways are jammed.
A lot of big booths.
A lot of really big booths. I mean, the Avid one was multiple levels. Like, well, this is shades of E3 in the video game sector 25 years ago, when that's where all the money was. So it's really interesting. It's also impossible to navigate here without a couple of homing pigeons helping you out with like a low jack on their rear ends. I mean, that's the only shot that I got.
Yeah, AI has to be able to help that, right?
You would think so, but I don't think even AI is that powerful. I think what they're really depending on is people get lost, they run across a booth, and they go, oh, I should do something with you guys. I mean, that's like the only thing that makes sense. But it is a truly extraordinary show. And for the moment, at least, the rain has abated, and we just have little fluffy clouds scudding across the sky, the blue sky, and a lot of strapping Northern Europeans around us. But it is an interesting scene, and one I strongly recommend if you ever have need to be a broadcaster. I think the other thing that's really interesting to think about is the difference between the U.S. and European scenes. The many languages of the EU, for instance, chop up everything, and it's really hard to get a big audience, right?
And not just the languages, but I mean the financial things are different, the regulations.
Right. All the EU regulations. But because there's all those languages, for instance, FAST has not taken hold fast here. Broadcast remains much more powerful here. A lot of these countries have state-run broadcasters that, they're tight because everybody's looking at where every nickel of tax dollars goes. But they can actually create a good-sized audience in ways that are less true in the United States these days, as everybody dives into streaming pretty quickly, holds on to broadcast so they can get the broadest reach possible. But it changes the economics of things, I think, in really notable ways, and it's worthwhile to remember that.
No, that's definitely true. And I was talking to the CEO of OCAST TV today, who is a big proponent of FAST for Europe and kind of helping to spearhead some consortiums there for kind of European-led tech and not just U.S. players in the FAST. And I asked him kind of where's the state of FAST in Europe right now, and he said he thinks 2026 is the year when it becomes like actual business. Like, yes, there is some money happening, but it's not like real business yet, and he thinks it'll take on more next year.
Well, that's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, the Europeans are 3 years behind the Americans, but it's just they're 3 years different. I mean, really is, I think, one way to think about it, because particularly after the latest cuts to PBS, there's not a whole lot of public ownership of the airwaves in the United States. But all those private companies are just diving in really hard on the streaming. That's where they're making their bets. It is a different dynamic, and even somebody like ITV we're talking about, which is a for-profit, or Channel 4 in the UK, they've got different considerations because they're going up against the BBC. So, just seeing the markets differences here, I think, are pretty fascinating contrasts. And really valuable.
And I think Channel 4 has kind of, Grace Bosworth has kind of hit home multiple times that for them it's unique because they aren't beholden to a founder, they aren't beholden to shareholders, and really, like, in theory, they get to create what's good for the public.
Or whatever they damn well want, basically.
Yes, so
Creators Unbound at Channel 4. So.
Well, I mean, they license their model is all licensing.
It's all licensing, so great. Well, I think we've got enough here that we'll probably wrap this puppy up before the lacerating winds of the North Sea cut my flesh into little tiny pieces. I can't even imagine what it's like for you, Bevin, because unlike you, I carry a lot of insulation naturally, or semi-naturally. But with this, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT, with my good buddy Bevin Fletcher from Stream TV Insider. We are wrapping this puppy up for the day, but there's more to come tomorrow and all through the week, or weekend. So take care.